Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure today to stand here to introduce the business models of the fund licensing in Asia. So for me, I think in the Western countries, licensing funds is easy. You just go on the web and you choose the funds you need, and then it will tell you how you could use these funds, and that's it. But however, licensing funds in Asia is different and sometimes it's confusing. So what's the problem? Actually, this is an end-user license agreement of a fund foundry in Taiwan, and there are more than 2 pages to tell you how you could or could not use the funds. So basically, it says it allows internal use of a person, group, or enterprise, but not for business. Doesn't allow to use for embedded or portable digital documents, and doesn't allow to public marketing events, play on multimedia, games, ebooks, or any other business-related devices. So, and I asked some questions like, if I use the fund for my company and print some brochures of the product, is that okay? And the answer is no, because it's related to the product. So it's for the business use. And how about using it to a presentation to introduce the product to the customers? And of course, no, because it's still related to the business. And I just couldn't think of a company that would need a fund for internal use. And the guy just told me that if you're a blogger, and you could use it for your blog. But this license model has been existed for over 20 years. So I can imagine who would use a fund for a blog 20 years ago. So I think the problem should be in transparent and too complicated. So today I'm going to say the main license models in Asia, and they include the license of the desktops, webs, apps, embedded devices, and there are some special license models. So first of all, I'll go through the desktop license. So for the desktop license, types include personal use, business use, or use for design for the third parties. And I'll talk about the difference among China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Thailand. So first is the desktop license of China. And it's amazing that for personal use, it's free. And 2 major players in China want their funds to be used as widely as possible, so that one day when they need the funds for business use, they would pay for it. And for business use, funds could be licensed to enterprises annually or perpetually. Or they have another choice to subscribe funds for 1 year or 2. And for designers, you could take it as a personal use. But if the work is designed for the third party and for business, the third party should pay for the funds. And in Japan, license models are less complicated. So for personal use, you could just download a fund for perpetual use, just like most of the license models of Western fund foundries. And for business use, they have very mature and successful subscription service. And you could just subscribe funds for 1 year or 2 years. But if an enterprise has too many desktops, they could just choose the enterprise license. So all the business use are allowed funds to be designed for the third parties. There are no extra license is needed. So in Korea, it's more complicated. Basically, major players allowed either personal or business use under the same license agreement. But when the funds are used for business purpose, extra license agreement is needed according to the license range. So users could get funds through package or subscription service. And things have changed greatly in Taiwan. So in Taiwan, fund foundries used to deliver funds through CD-ROMs, but end up with no one buying a license anymore. So in the past 2 years, CD-ROMs are transferred to a subscription service. So you could subscribe funds quarterly or annually, or you just purchase an enterprise license. But when designers, they design for third parties, a specific license is needed. Okay, desktop license models in Thailand is a little bit different. So you could do a retail license to use fonts for business like CI, TV commercials, and webs. But if a designer needs fonts to design for third parties, both the designers and the third parties need to pay for the license. Okay, then the web font. Web font license type is just the same as the rest of the world. So you could just license by page views, and self-hosted is also available. But the problem is web font in Asia, I think it never really takes off. Because for CJK fonts, I mean like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean fonts, Chinese characters are always included. So the font file is always too large. So subsetting is necessary. And subsetting is not too hard for the font foundries, but users are not familiar with the technology. And besides, there are extra costs, so people are not really comfortable about it. And a lot of them use free web fonts like Google Fonts. So we could see more people using web fonts now, but it grows very slowly. And in Korea, users of web fonts even drops. Okay, and then for the fonts for apps. Game apps adopt fonts the most. So for the license types, users could license font for one or more than one game apps annually or perpetually. Or a game company could just license a font for unlimited use, or you could just do it case by case. It's very flexible. But the price is always not good because no one knows how long will an app last. Okay. And then here's the embedded font. They are the fonts for the OEMs. It was very flourishing in Asia from like 2000 to 2010. And since there are a lot of device makers in Asia, basically those fonts are customized for OEMs. And font technology is the key. One license type, the license type is varied. So basically OEM pay for an initial fee to develop related items like the font engines, and then they will pay by like royalty or annual or perpetual license fee. But unfortunately, after 2010, embedded fonts are influenced by free fonts, especially like Google Fonts. So embedded fonts drop tremendously from then. Okay, and then I'll go for some very special license models in Asia, and they all exist in China. One is the mobile stores, and another is about sending letter of inform. So you might be very curious about like who would use crazy fonts like these. And the answer is the mobile stores in China. And the quality of these fonts doesn't need to be very good, but they need to be very different to show the different personalities. Because there are more than 13 billion people in China, and they really want to be different. So fonts for mobile stores started from 2015. And the famous phone maker Xiaomi started it. And Xiaomi let users to change their system font for mobile phones, and it becomes super popular. So from January 2015 to June 2017, there are more than 21 million downloads for these funds. And the price for one fund is around 0.5 US dollars to 1.8 US dollars. So when users download it, it's under the perpetual license for one phone. And therefore, major players, including Huawei, Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo. And basically, they are all local smartphone makers of China. Okay. And then I'll talk about a more even special license. I don't even know how to call it, so I put a letter of inform in the title. And it's how they run the business. In my previous slides, I mentioned about the desktop license for personal use in China is free. But notice only for personal use. So sometimes people use the funds for business accidentally or they just without bothering buying them. So Chinese fund foundries, they start to go to the street to collect their funds for business purpose use without license, and then send them a letter of inform to tell them that, oh, you are using our funds illegally. So reminding them to pay for the funds. Okay, and I've heard a major foundry in China to told us they send like thousands of letter of inform every year, and it becomes the most important income for Chinese fund foundries. And you might think it's tricky, but it works, and it works very well. So, because piracy has always been a serious problem in China, and in this way, people are aware to know that they need to pay for funds. And for those who wouldn't pay for funds, Chinese fund foundries would sue them for violate their funds. So there are two very famous judicial precedents. Okay, so one is a very famous consumer good corporation. And this company used two characters of a typeface owned by the foundry called F on their shampoo without licensing. But the judgment of Beijing court said it doesn't violate the copyright of the fund foundry. Since in China, copyright law protects the font, means a complete font file, not individual characters. So although the foundry lost the case, but as I know, the Consumer Good Corporation paid for two characters in the end. Okay, but things went different for another case. So this is a baby product company, and they used three characters for a foundry H, okay, as their logo. And the judgment of Nanjing court said, although the company only used three characters, but the characters show the uniqueness of the typeface owned by Foundry H. So they should be protected by the law of copyright. So the foundry won the case, and the baby good company not only need to pay for indemnity, but also they need to change their logo. So they just changed their logo into this. Okay. So, but I heard from one of the foundry that they have won these kind of cases in 6 provinces in China. And they told us it helps them to tell people they need to pay for the funds. Okay. And one more interesting thing is the trend of licensing models in Asia changes. So in the past, packages for perpetual use was the most popular way delivering funds. But now, funds are downloaded from cloud in a subscription way. So you could see in China, or Japan, and Korea, or Taiwan, subscription funds are all available. So one thing good about subscription service is users need to use the fonts through a management tool. So the fonts could be protected by the management tool. So subscription font is very, very successful in Japan. And as I know, it's doing very well in Korea as well. And last, I'll talk about the license models of variable fonts. But I think it's still more like the opening discussion because I don't really have an exact idea how variable fonts should be licensed. And I've found 2 websites selling variable fonts. So first is the Zetun Flex, and they sell Latin fonts. So for one instance, it's for like $40, and for 16 instances, it's like $250. And the price is about like 6 times expensive. And for 32 instances, it's about $400, but it's 10 times of one instance. So when you buy over 32 instances, it means like it allows you to interpolate any settings you like with a price of $750. So it's about 18 times of one instance. But actually, I can't really get any idea of the relationship between the quantity of instance and the price. And another example is from a Japanese foundry called ATypI. And they sell one instance for 25,000 Japanese yen and 18 instances for 370,000 Japanese yen. So 18 times of instances about 14 times expensive. Still can't get any clue of the relationship of quantity and the price. And then when you buy one setting font, it's about 29,500 Japanese yen, about 1.2 times of one instance. But for me, this is reasonable because when you set up the font you need, it's not the standard product. So you just spend a little bit more money for it. I think it's reasonable. So the possibility of variable font is variable. So users could buy one instance, maybe only one character. So how should we price that, or how should we license that? On top of that, designing different X's takes different efforts. Should we just sell the same X's in the same price? So maybe we could talk about it next year. I believe I'll have a better idea next year. And thank you for your listening today. And I'll give my special thanks to Kasen Dimag, Chung Woo, and Sendo. Thank you.